Hello, and welcome to Thoughts and Insights from Bird in Sky. And we are going to look at the mysteries of Osiris. This was written by R. Swinburne Clymer and published in 1951. And he writes that it is said with truth, and those seeking to attain the ultimate should remember this saying in all its applications, that order is heaven's first law, because confusion or chaos always follows disobedience. He who refuses to obey this law will be destroyed. Well, I don't think so. I mean, if this writing is actually based on Egyptian mystery writings, then it is forced through the lens of contemporary religion. And let's face it, contemporary religion has not shifted in quite a while, for at least 2 or 3 centuries. So this is forced through that perspective, because order is not heaven's first law, because it contradicts what was presented before. Heaven, according to the Aramaic and Hebrew language, is the throne of the Father, or the dwelling of the Father. In short, heaven is this temple, is within you. And the first law can only be that order is found in chaos. That is the first law. Wherever there is chaos, it has its own order. And order can only come from chaos. Therefore, heaven was not something that was orderly, because it had to have come from chaos. Everything that has an order comes from chaos. And even chaos has its own sense of order. It's hidden from view. Hence, it is called chaos. And to say that any who refuses to obey this law will be destroyed, it's a deception. Anybody who believes it is, well, foolish, immature, unexperienced, or inexperienced. All things come from chaos. All things come from darkness. All things come from knowledge. All things come from ignorance. You cannot have knowledge without first being ignorant. You cannot have order without first understanding chaos. And many people, believe it or not, prefer chaos over order, because if everything is in chaos, they do not have to accept responsibility. Hence, their life appears to be in a shambles. And it is well known that the mystery schools never present anything forthwith. You always have to reflect upon it, think about it, consider it, test it, and then integrate it. You always have to go through a process, and that is what order is. Order is a process. Order is a discipline, and that is life. Everything in life, to achieve something in life, requires discipline. You have to have some form of discipline. Even a chaotic life requires some form of discipline. I don't know what that might be, because my life seems to flow, but again, order comes from chaos. And if we were to invert this, confusion or chaos is always followed by order. In order for chaos to occur, there must first be something that is established. There must be order, because it is only when one deviates from that orderly process that they experience confusion. No matter how you frame it, that's the way it works. Those that fail to understand this, well, they become lost. And the only way they can be found is if they discover this for themselves, because nature does not destroy anything. Nature repurposes, or you could say nature recycles. And consider this. The earth plane is what we know as hell, or the temporal, the ever-changing and constantly suffering plane of existence. It is the below into which the soul falls to gain wisdom and understanding by experiencing both joy and suffering. This is another forced interpretation. None of the mystery schools teach that the soul falls. None of them teach that. It is a misinterpretation of the word descend. No one falls. It is part of a cycle. If one rises, one must descend. Ascend, descend. It is a cycle. It is flow. It is no different than the tide coming in and then the tide going out. All of nature flows through this rhythm of ebb and flow. Everything. If you take a moment to reflect upon your life, you will discover that your life reflects this same ebb and flow. Thus, the soul naturally descends and ascends according to your understanding. And, it's usually a narrow understanding. Even my understanding is narrow. And I read a variety of sources. But even my understanding is limited. I'm open to expanding it, but in order for it to expand, it must first be limited. It's just the way nature operates. The soul is in constant transition, moving from existence to existence, moving from the earth plane to the spiritual plane, to the material plane, to the intangible plane, it moves back and forth. Nature moves back and forth. Whether corporeal or incorporeal, the soul will experience joy and suffering. These terms are merely substitutes for the words order and chaos. Thus, the foundation of the Egyptian mysteries, which implies the Egyptian initiation, was based on the knowledge of those who instituted the mysteries. They taught that the soul had originally existed in a pure, sinless state, that it then fell from its original purity and innocence and gravitated from the form of a spiritual essence into a material body, realizing its reduced status, its chief concern, the aim and scope of all earthly creatures, meaning man or us, was to pass through successive states of experience, sufferings and joys, purifications and exaltations, back to the original fellowship, not into the deity, but the original fellowship with the deity. Well, this does not follow the flow of nature. The soul was never pure, or if it ever was pure, the soul is pure even now. If your soul was pure from the very beginning, it is still pure right now. It is only through ignorance that we view corruption as something evil. All corruption is change. That's it. Change is inevitable. You pick the fruit, you leave it out, it is going to spoil. It has no choice. Even if you were to put it in the refrigerator, it is still going to spoil. It has no choice. It is part of the flow. If this were not the case, then birth, growth, decay, and death are the product of an evil God. And there is no God, only representations of progress. Movement. When you think of the Father, it is nature that expresses this entire concept. It's not that early man looked at nature and invented God to explain nature, or perhaps invented God to explain nature, or there is a supreme intelligence. We see that in nature. It is superior to ours. We see that. And we see that because there is order, there is flow, there is cause and effect, which becomes cause and effect. We see that. Cycles, we see that. But until we understand that, it is a mystery. We are ignorant of it. With the Father, there is nature, and the Father is the mother, because all things begin and end with the Father. Hence the term Alpha and Omega. Initiation, completion. Beginning, end. Cause and effect. It is the expression. And the purpose of the soul is to create. That is your true purpose, to create. You create your own suffering, you create your own joy, you create all that happens to you through your interpretations of what you do and others have done to you, or what you create and others have created. This purpose of the soul, which is to create, has always been its purpose and continues to be its purpose, to create. You create what is in your life. You want happiness in your life? Do something that is happy. You want misery in your life? Well, you're probably already doing it. But the point is, your purpose is to create. And you fulfill that purpose. Now, the purpose of creation is not to impose suffering or joy upon anyone. Meaning that you cannot make someone happy. You cannot make someone miserable. You cannot. That rests in the purview of mankind, or rather, that rests in their interpretation of your actions, just as your interpretation of their actions determines whether it is good or evil. It is all in your interpretations and your response to those interpretations. That is how you create. And what brings suffering is the misinterpretation of the actions of others and yourself, which results in responses that do not support the organized flow or the order of flow of nature, but supports a chaotic flow, supports a storm, a tsunami, a tornado. So it is not through purification and suffering that you return to fellowship with the deity. You are already in fellowship with the deity. You are already in fellowship with your God, and that's it. Your God, because it is your interpretation of God, and you are already in fellowship with that. You never fell out of fellowship. You are in fellowship. As long as you are part of nature, you are in fellowship with your God. And it is the inability to recognize that you are in union with your God that you create your suffering. An interesting concept, isn't it? So do not make the mistake that the soul only creates while in this form, because it doesn't. The soul is continuously changing, and because the soul, your soul, is continuously changing, your God is ever changing. It is unchangeable because it is ever changing. That is its nature, and its nature cannot change. Thus, the ever changing God is unchangeable. It's a paradox, I know. But if the purpose of the soul is to create, it must create, regardless of its form. Meaning that whether you are here and you add upon your experiences, you expand your awareness, you seek joy and happiness, and you cultivate joy and happiness, you will cultivate the same when you leave this portion of your existence. Yes, this falls away. All that is dense falls into its own nature. It returns to its nature. And that which is not dense returns to its nature. Everything continues in its nature. But in order to create, there must be substance. There must be something to create with. So even in the next realm, there is substance there for you to create, for you to experience. It is ever changing, yet unchanging. It's an interesting concept, an interesting paradox, I'm sure. And this actually did not explain much of anything except that. Except that. Order must come from chaos, and chaos must create order. They're the same. Within chaos is order, and with order is chaos. They are the same. That is the paradox. The earth plane is ever changing, and because the earth plane is ever changing, the spirit plane is also ever changing. Ever changing. The soul is ever changing because it moves through successive states of experiences, sufferings, and joys, purifications, exaltations, back to its original fellowship. Only it is in constant fellowship with its deity. I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, take a moment, subscribe, like the video, and I bid you farewell and enjoy what you create.